Hi, this is Andreia. I'm an autism mum. If you're listening for the first time, I'm here to be the voice of my daughter, other parents, professionals, and neurodivergent individuals through our own lived experiences. I want to give visibility to these superstars that most of the time behind the scenes make a huge impact on neurodivergent lives. Welcome to the Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference.
And today I have another special guest because all my guests are very special. I've got Cheryl with me, who supports organizations with chaos to clarity, and she's going to tell us more about that throughout our conversation. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, Andreia. Thank you for having me today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for agreeing to be interviewed. It's a pleasure to have you here. And it's actually interesting because you might not believe this. I met Cheryl once, and we had a phone call that I think I never told her this, but it was life-changing for me. It was a simple chat, but it was so inspirational. And actually it had quite a lot of a positive income. So I'm very grateful to you, Cheryl, for that.
You are really welcome. You can tell how that's impacted me. And I know people can't see me, but that's had a real impact. So I'm glad that conversation made a difference to you and you were able to take that forward. So there you go. So sometimes it is that chaotic mind. And I just sort of work with people to find the clarity, find their purpose so that they can find that direction and move towards it. So the fact that I was able to do that in such a short time with you is really special. So delighted to hear that.
I'm sure you are helping a lot more other people, making a positive impact.
Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference.
So my first question to you is, what has brought you to this stage of your journey with neurodiversity?
Yeah, so for me, a couple of years ago, my daughter had a diagnosis, was diagnosed with autism. And I suppose, you kind of go, wow, okay, that's why she is the way she is. That's why, and we started to kind of look into and understand it better. But it's really just the start of your journey because you almost get that news and you're like, well, what now? So I would say even 2 years on, we're still learning. She's still learning an awful lot about herself. We're still learning how to sort of parent in that space. So that's how neurodiversity came into my life. But I would say because of the career I had in HR, for me, it was always about the why behind the person. So I've always had that curiosity anyway and just sort of understanding. And when I look back and I reflect, I can see so many times that I was sitting with a neurodiverse individual and trying to work through why they weren't thriving or, and what we could do. And that was always really, really important to me. So this sort of I suppose, it gives you that passion and you want to just understand more for her and make the world a better place, for her to be out there being employed and people understanding the differences and just not judging.
Yeah, indeed. And I think if we were to describe our journeys in one word, learning is probably the one that embraces everything that we go through.
Yeah, and learning and kind of, I think there's a lot about being compassionate to yourself because you can't get this right. There is no right and wrong. No. It's kind of I think of it like a squiggly path, like this whole chaotic thing again is just kind of just being able to understand and unpick quite a bundle of wool and trying to just sort of, and one minute you'll think, oh, I'm winding it back up and it's just about going right, and then you'll get something that you've not experienced before.
There's a step back.
Yeah, and you just have to sort of say, it's okay, and you're not, you are just learning. Yeah.
Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference.
So let's go more into the specifics of what do you learn with your daughter every day. Is there an example that you can give us?
Oh wow, yeah. Where do I start? So for Naya, she is incredible in a lot of ways. She likes a lot of structure. She likes to know what her day is going to look like. But then, although she's not had diagnosis yet, I would say that there's ADD there as well. So we also see this impulsive. So when I've talked to her about that in the past, and I've just sort of, I know I can think of an example actually. She was heading to Oxford on a bus after school. Her friend said, "Should we go to Oxford?" And she was like, "Yeah, let's go, let's do it." And she was due to work that evening, so she only had a couple of hours window. And she called me and said, "We've got on the bus to Oxford." And I went, "Okay, it's going to get in at this time. You're literally going to get there and have to turn around and come back. Am I?" Because she's so in the moment in lots of ways, but also I said to her, you could always plan that with your friends. You could always say, "I'll go in a couple of weeks." But her point was, if I do that, I'm just going to overthink. I'm going to get anxiety with it because what if this happens? What if it gives me too much time for these changes to come in? So there's kind of this, if it's in the moment, I make a decision, I just go with it. I haven't got all that anxiety that sort of comes with it. But thinking through the stages, that's something I've really had to learn to kind of say to her, what is it you need to think about with this? What could be the impact of this? How much time will that be? And try and help her to get those tools to work back a little bit. And, so there's this almost like an oxymoron with her sometimes. She wants this structure, but she also has this other side of her brain saying, I want to be impulsive. I want to live in the moment. Yeah. So it's like
the clash in between both of them.
Yeah.
But we all know that sometimes it's good to be spontaneous and to do things, and it's really good to see that she actually decided to go. It was something different. See that she's brave to try new things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the biggest learning I've had. And I think as a parent, you want to step in and almost have that judge parent voice come in and go, "Oh, why haven't you thought about?" So I've had to really learn that deep breath and just, okay, well, we are where we are. How can we now sort of talk in a language that doesn't create demand avoidance, that, empowers her? And that's not always easy because, of course, I have my own energy level and bucket level. And if that bucket's full, I find it harder to take that pause. So it's not always easy. And I think that's where the self-compassion has to come in, where you have to say, give yourself a break because you're not always going to get it right.
Yeah.
And
again, what's right?
Yeah.
What's right? What's wrong?
Yeah.
It doesn't. It's quite interesting because that I assisted to a webinar on autism a couple of weeks ago, and that's exactly one of the things we learned and we were discussing, that we cannot judge ourselves. We can just and also that we sometimes as parents have less patience for our children than there were some other professionals working with other children who recognize that it's easier to deal with other children than actually with our own, because we have busy lives. We work. If you are career focused, like both of us are, then you get to the end of the day with everything in your head. And so it's what you say really about taking that deep breath and thinking, step back, thinking before acting, and use appropriate language to that's positive instead. So
and not always, I don't claim to be an expert on this at all, but I think what I've tried to connect with more is the one thing I can control is me.
Yes.
Naira is Naira, and she's her own individual. So there's the level of influence I have, but there's that I can only control how I respond to something. So I try and be more mindful about that. But it's not always easy. Yeah, if you've had a full day and something just comes in as a curveball, and she and every day is a school day. I think still with her. I'm still.
Can I ask how old is she?
She's 18 now.
She's 18.
Yeah. So she's driving, learning to drive, getting her independence with that again, and just understanding journey times, where she's going to be, the route she's going to take somewhere, and just sort of trying to help her to manage her energy levels, because it's okay if she's absolutely exhausted and shattered and needs to stay in bed for the day, right? And just recharge. So trying to help her to think, what have you got ahead? What is work? What have you got on college-wise? What are going to be big events, that you want to go to? She likes to go to festivals, music festivals, and, and she can do that. Of course she can, but it's kind of like knowing that she might need to buffer the next day or 2 days. And I think she's learning more and more with that. And sometimes I think, she's 18 and she just wants to just rebel against it and be like, why can't I do this? So there's elements of that coming in as well.
Yeah, she's a teenager still.
Yeah, yes.
But that's really good to see, because mine, she's 7.5, almost 8, and I think one of my biggest fears is not a fear. It's that uncertainty of what's going to happen. How is she going to develop?
Yeah,
is she going to be independent enough? I love music. I love going to music festivals, for example, and she loves music as well. Will I ever be able to take her? Will she ever be able to go on her own? Will she be able to drive? So I think examples like your daughter are really good to have, so that we look up in a positive way to the future, which I am positive about my daughter's future. But, we are parents, so it's okay to be scared and to fear what's going to happen.
For sure, yeah.
Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference.
Yeah, in the future, I still think, with Nye, there's a lot of uncertainty around work and how work will look for her. And it's great to see more people talking about neurodiversity, what that looks like in employment and reasonable adjustments. But I think it's still got a very long way to go. So, but I try not to let that run away with me. I try and just think when we're there, and I wonder whether for her it will be self-employment, because she has more control over her day, over her energy levels, and is able to ebb and flow with that a bit more, so that she can dictate that rather than having it done to her.
Yeah, and it's all about living the present, isn't it? There's no point on getting anxious about the future. Whatever happens will happen.
Yeah.
Hopefully we will be here to support them and to continue support them. So, yeah.
Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference.
So in what areas of the system do you think neurodivergent children, people in general, are failed the most?
Wow, what a question. I think it starts at school. I think it starts from a really young age. I was delighted to see that Parliament is now taking a vote, with regards to testing children at a much younger age. But I think, with that comes having to be more flexible in how we teach. We knew before we knew so much about neurodivergent children and people that we all learn differently. So even neurotypical people learn differently, right? And so we're not all geared up to this one-size-fits-all, sitting in a classroom being taught, being told, or, and whilst teachers bring their own style to that, that still is the environment. So even if you were looking at neurotypical people learning, that isn't the right environment for everybody in that pot, if you like. So for neurodivergent children, there needs to be almost much more flexibility, much more fluid, and thinking about things differently, and asking their community, well, what would work for you,
Yep.
Like I said with Naya, she loves to go to festivals and to music, and the number of people that might have said to me, well, she likes the loud music. I said, yeah. So don't make assumptions, ask. So I think it's difficult because I can understand that you've got 30 children in a classroom, and that's a hard, how do you adapt all of that? But I think it's about getting information and doing the best you can. And rather than seeing it as this big, overwhelming thing that actually we won't tackle because it's so big, just start somewhere, right? Start one thing and start small and just build on that. And whether that is flexible, we saw in COVID, homeschooling can work with teachers online. That worked beautifully for Naya. She suddenly had a lot more control. Why can't we be doing that? We know it can happen. We know we can do it. It's resources, money, and that investment, I think. But yeah, I think it starts really, really young, and I think that's where they're being failed.
And it's very interesting because when I ask this question to all my guests, education is a common answer. And yeah, as you say, there's still a long way to go for things to change. And that's why it's important that there is the understanding of what autism and the other neurodivergent types of conditions exist, because what you just said about people saying, oh, your daughter, she likes loud music. Yes, but there needs to be the understanding that it's a color spectrum, it's a color wheel spectrum, and they will all be different. But as you also said, we are all different. And things need to try to start to change slowly, and we need to start somewhere.
And I was at I'm a big advocate of kind of the Do It and the Do It Profiler, which is an Oxfordshire-based charity, does a lot of work raising awareness for neurodivergent people and in schools, etc. Professor Amanda Kirby runs it. There's lots of information they put out there, lots of free resources on their website. But what I took from that is, it all starts with knowing that an individual is still an individual, and it's asking them what they like, what they found challenging, what is their sensory light and needs like. All of those things will be different. Like you said, it's a wheel. It's not this linear, it's this or it's this. And again, even if we look at neurotypical people, they certainly will have different things we don't like.
That we are good at, that we are less good at.
Extroversion, introversion, thinking, feeling style, all of that. And that's, we're complex.
Exactly. Yeah, we are. At the end of the day, we are not so different.
Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference.
Who is your biggest support on your journey?
Oh, wow. My biggest supporter has got to be my husband, Ian. He's, I feel like, we're a good tag team. So I say, we talk about sort of our energy levels and who can have the conversations with Naya, who has the energy for them. And, so we support each other with that. And I would say that's definitely been fabulous. And it's been great coming into Oxford Creators as well, when they have the mornings where parents can come together, because I think that gives you that grounding that you're not alone. It can sometimes feel really, really lonely, even as, even if you're fortunate enough that you are a couple and you're parenting as a couple, you still have that loneliness aspect. And is this just us in this bubble? And is this happening for other people? And, my eldest, Rihanna, she's always really great with Nara as well. Nara will go to her and sort of talk to her. So sometimes, she just needs different people on different days sometimes to give her, I think she'll talk about that sometimes. She says, she almost has a role for people in her head and who she goes to for different things. And that's where it's quite defined, And
it's really good that she recognizes who can support her with what.
With what? Yeah. So if ever she is really overwhelmed and perhaps having a panic attack, it's often Rihanna that she'll want around. She'll say to Ian and I, your voice annoys me, so don't be here. So it really triggers her. But and you have to accept that. You have to just kind of walk away and go, okay, we're not the right people in this moment. Hard as it is, because you want to just nurture, you want to make it better.
Of course.
But, it's just recognizing that actually you're not always the best person, and sometimes someone else will bring something different and a different perspective. So, I think as a family, we just, we try and sort of pull together. We don't get me wrong, we have our moments. It's not all back, but yeah, we're a good supportive unit for one another.
Yeah, that's amazing to see.
Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference.
So when you have some time for yourself, because you work, you are a mom, what are your favorite things to do? What do you do?
So for me, it's definitely getting out in nature. It's having adventures, I would say. I love to travel, but it's for me now, don't know if this happens in your twilight years a bit more, even if it's just a day that I'm going to somewhere different, I've not been and experienced before, that's enough. It's kind of just seeing nature and its beauty, actually. And I know that sounds a bit cheesy, but it works for me. It's what I need. It's what I have to fuel me up. And sometimes, particularly if I'm feeling really in it, really overwhelmed and it's almost suffocating, it can feel like that sometimes. I think nature is great. You just open your eyes and you look around and it kind of gives you something. It gifts you something, but you have to be looking for it. So I'm really mindful when I'm in those moments to be looking around and just seeing things and noticing things, and just joy comes in the cracks. I think sometimes as humans we think it's going to be this big euphoric moment and it's going to last days. That isn't life. You have to be looking for these little joyful moments that just come in the cracks of life. And I get a lot of that when I'm out in nature or I'm experiencing a different culture, or I think I just look at things with curiosity, and that fuels me up.
Yeah, and it's not cheesy at all. I totally agree. One of the things I miss most from home is the seaside, and just to sit down, watching the waves come and go, and breathing, or just even be there, just walking by the beach. It's so it really helps, and it's proven that anything that's nature helps with our mental health.
Yeah, it's just that, I don't know, it's like a rhythm, isn't it? Like say, when you're by the sea, you have a rhythm. If you're in a forest and you hear the trees and there's wind in the trees and you really tap into that, again, it's a rhythm. It just helps you to just ground and go. And sometimes I've looked up and thought, do you know, in the whole scheme of things, I'm only a little, a little thing on this planet.
Yeah.
And it kind of puts things in perspective sometimes. Yeah.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Neurodiverse Voices Podcast, celebrating difference.
And who is your biggest inspiration?
Yeah. So I would say I'm on LinkedIn a lot. So I see a lot of other coaches and people in this space. I talked about the Do It Profiler and, the team that behind that. Mm-hmm. Big inspiration for that. There's also some really good voices. I think Dan Harris is on there, and he's lobbying a lot for the UN to make changes for neurodivergent people and in school. So I think I look to them to say, wow, what a voice, right? I wish I had but they have this energy to just keep going and keep trying and keep pushing the boundaries. So I find that inspirational. But I also love, on the sort of wider stage, I suppose, there's a lady called Brené Brown. I don't know if you've ever heard of her.
And I'm going to have to make a note of all of these because, I do have quite a few sources, but I don't know any of them.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. No, she's a Texan. She's written several books, but her main she's actually a scientist. That's where she was a researcher. So she comes from that logical brain, but has also really tapped into kind of shame and understanding what shame means for us. And she recently did a Netflix documentary, so she's on Netflix. So it's definitely worth seeing. And what is so powerful about that is saying, ultimately, whatever we're experiencing, it often shame is sitting, or fear is sitting at somewhere in there. And just trying to get us to tap into that, to just understand that and how it works for us. And I think that's just really inspiring to sort of, to stand up and do that. I mean, she said that she did a TED Talk first, and she sort of talks about that first TED Talk she did. And she was and the hangover she had afterwards, right? She's gone out there and put herself out there, and she thought, oh, maybe only a few people will watch this. It went viral.
Yeah.
And, she just sort of said, suddenly you're out, very visible. And she talks about women being in the arena. You put yourself out there, you speak out, and anybody sitting on the sidelines throwing stuff at you, right? They're not in there. They've not been brave, and kind of really harnessing your bravery and your courage, because it takes bravery and courage to be visible and to speak up. So I think that's why there's some, more local voices, perhaps not a platform as big as hers, that I really admire, because they are just embracing that and saying, I'm going to say what I need to say, and whatever comes back,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
I will still be here fighting for my cause. And
so that really inspires me.
Yeah. I think I will go watch Netflix tonight.
Neurodiverse Voices Podcast, celebrating difference.
It's a good one. It's a good
Yeah. So speaking about watching, I'm a bit of a fan of superheroes. So one of the questions I ask my guests is, if you were a superhero or if you had a superpower, who would that be, or what would that be?
So I've always loved Star Wars since I was a kid. I think when I kind of, if you analyze it, I think there's always something for me about the light and the dark, and there has to be balance. It has to, you have to have the two. So I love Yoda, and I think he's a small character and sometimes maybe understated, but what he says is so powerful. It might just come out one line and that's it, but it means a lot. It is actually, you listen to it, and so this little green pointy ears, character, and I just think there's some real we shouldn't forget the Yodas in our life. Sometimes I think the quieter voices, the ones that maybe are a bit understated, and you have this perception, actually
are the ones that
are the most powerful, and don't underestimate them. So Yoda, I think.
Yeah, great. So I was going to ask, how would you use your superpower to make the world a better place for neurodiversity? But I guess you answered that question.
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah, maybe somewhat. I think for me, if I could do one thing by waving a magic wand, it would just be to say to people, stop your judge, hold it, keep it in check, and just be curious. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to be right. Just be curious about people. And if you're seeing a behaviour, that's a symptom of something. It's not the cause. So, the curiosity, and create the space where someone can just come and share that with you, because that's really special. And a lot of the time, just being heard, particularly in that community when they're in a society that says this is how life is, that's not being heard. So, create a space where where that individual can just speak and be heard. And I think there's a lot of power in just listening.
Yeah. Listening is very important, and actively listening, not just listening for the sake of it. Because when we start listening, then we understand things better. And with regards to judgment and shame, I also feel like sometimes, and we talked about this earlier, of us judging ourselves as parents, but I do find myself sometimes overanalyzing some behaviors, and I feel like I'm the one who brings the judgment to myself, which is quite strange because I'm everything but a judgmental person, and I always accept that we are all different. But then I do this to myself, and I'm aware of it, and I try to control it, but sometimes it's not as easy. So I guess that's what happens with other people as well. But yeah, we need to shift the mindset, and because if we stop doing this with ourselves, then we stop doing that with other people.
Yeah, and I think to earlier I sort of said, it all starts with self. That's the only thing you can control is you.
Yeah.
And I think if you have those in check and really know when your own judge is coming in, either judging you or judging others, you have that power to go, no, get back in your box.
Yep.
I don't want to hear that. I need to I'm choosing to show up and be curious with this person. I'm choosing to show up and understand the why. And actually, it's okay if I don't know the answers, because, it's showing that vulnerability really yourself. And I think if you do that, you're able to create almost a mirror where someone feels safer to do it. Even if you're saying, I don't think I've ever spoken to someone with autism before. Please tell me more, tell me more about that. What does that look like for you? How's your day? Talk me through your day. What do you find the challenges are? It's just curious. Doesn't mean that you have to be the expert. You don't live that experience. So just in the same way, it'd be lovely. It's lovely when someone shows that curiosity about you.
Yeah, that's very true.
Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference.
I started doing some presentations in a local school to children, and this morning I've done one. I've done years 3 and years 4. Yeah, and it was quite interesting to see their questions, and it also makes me realize that even younger children need to be made aware of autism, because one of them, when I asked, so what do you know about autism? The answer was, autism means anxiety. So it kind of goes around the right concept, but not really to what I then explained, that it's a color wheel, it's a spectrum, so it's not just about anxiety. And then I expanded on that, but it's very important. But it's good to see that children are curious as well. And then they asked me a bunch of questions, and he got to the point that I was like, okay, breathe, you can do this. Because it's quite different to be talking to adults than talking with children, and you need to find the right words to speak to them. But yes, it's a great experience, and I feel really proud of myself that I'm doing it with younger people, and
that's
part of my mission.
That's where it starts. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
You know, that's ultimately where it starts. And I think what's so lovely when they're that age is that it is no barriers.
Yeah.
The inhibitions aren't there so much. You know, the society hasn't come in with it. We don't ask that. You shouldn't do that. All the should, you know, and all those rules around it. And they still have that freedom to say, you know, I remember going in, I can't remember, I think it was at primary school, when the girls were at primary school, and someone said, what do you earn? I was like, what do you mean? You know, ask things like that, you know, but why not? Why not ask that, you know? It's our own societal norms that have kind of created that, and that's a fair question, right? So I think they're great to, you know, in terms of that.
Yes, because they are fully honest.
Yeah, really honest and true and pure, and all those things haven't kind of come into their psyche so much then. Yeah.
Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference.
So what are your hopes for the future?
More and more awareness. I think my hopes are that that people just become more accepting and inclusive, and understand that just because they were brought up a certain way with a certain parenting, that doesn't work for everybody. You know, maybe it didn't work for them, right? So kind of look at that as well, and be your own person, be your own parent, do what's right for your child, and just educate, you know, as much as possible, without, again, that judge coming in. So if you do get someone who sort of says, well, I don't know why they're behaving like that, I wouldn't put up with it, or whatever those throwaway comments are, that you're able to actually say, rather than having to justify, you come more from a place of, well, why is that? Because these are the needs of my child. So I'm just interested, again, that curious, just interested why you think that. Why do you think that's the right thing to do, you know? And sometimes that just helps to not cause the defense mechanism. It's more of a gentle question to just sort of ask. But again, it opens that door to say, I can now share and raise your awareness of what life is like, maybe. And sometimes when you do that, that's when people say, oh, I've noticed this, you know, we haven't known how to deal with that.
Yeah.
And you're sharing that knowledge and maybe helping. Yeah, some small way.
And I also think that any behavior that neurodivergent people might have, it's not really what defines them, because they cannot control it. So we just need to look, it's who they are that really matters. It's what defines them, not the way they behave in an uncontrolled way, because they are not able to do that.
Yeah, and the number of stories that you hear now, particularly sort of from my era, it's, you know, it's very much, it was the naughty child in the corner, for example. Yeah. But what often you sometimes hear is that they had one teacher that actually was curious and said, come on, what's going on? Tell me more.
Yep.
Share this with me, and was able to tap into that. And that'll be the moment that pivoted, and they were seen for more than this behaviour. They were seen, those labels changed, that narrative changed. And we've just got to be really careful with how we are so quick to kind of put a sticker on something, or something,
label,
and that label's on, and then that person carries it, right? You know, even if it's just, I'm clumsy, you know, and then later in life, and as an adult, you're still thinking, oh, I do that because I'm clumsy, so I apologise. But actually, are you really? You know, is that something that you need to rip that up on and start your own? Actually, this is me. I'm more than clumsy. I'm all these other things. There's all these other parts to me.
Yeah.
Neurodiverse Voices Podcast, celebrating difference.
And I relate a bit to that because being Portuguese, if you look at most of our people, everyone is a bit tanned, darker skin, and I am very pale. So I suffered a little bit in school because, I was different.
Yeah.
I also wore glasses, and, 30-something years ago, wearing glasses, was not so popular. So, and these are things that only a few years ago, I think I overcame.
Yeah.
And I accepted myself from who I am. Why am I going to put fake tan? I am like this. I need to love myself and to learn to love myself the way I am.
Yeah.
I wear contact lenses, yes, from time to time, but I now look in the mirror and I love myself wearing glasses.
Yeah.
And this has nothing to do with neurodivergence, but it does, and it just shows once again that at the end of the day, we are not so different, and everyone just needs to get a bit more curious, as you say, and get informed, and and that's what we are doing here.
Yeah, it's just that. It's just really checking the labels you've almost clung on to.
Yeah.
And actually, you might just need to let go of them. They are just you can be who you want to be.
Yeah.
And show up as who you want to be. But it takes courage. It takes bravery. So back to the Brené Brown, but we can all bring that in when we want to. If you want to, you can say, okay, it's going to take a bit of courage. I'm going to have to dig deep.
Yeah.
But actually, I don't want this anymore. I don't want this label anymore. Just let it go, and decide who you want to show up as and who that authentic self is. And you'll find that with that comes a lot more flow, and and the battery stays a lot more charged.
Yes.
And doesn't run down so quickly, because it's tough being someone else. So easy to say, I get that, and like you, I've had to work on it. I've had coaching's really helped with that, having it myself, but also learning and that being my training and qualifying, and that has given me a lot more understanding to challenge that. But I have it's not easy. It's an ongoing. It's a destination. I can't say I'm there yet.
Yeah.
There's still days when I dip. But again, be compassionate with yourself and just know that that's okay.
Neurodiverse Voices Podcast, celebrating difference.
That's why I think by now you all understand why I said that a chat over the phone with Cheryl kind of changed my perspective of things, because she's amazing and she's... Cheryl, one final question. If your heart had a voice, what would it tell us?
Be kind. Just, I know you see it everywhere, but I think in my heart and in my core is always just come from a place of intent that's kind. If what you're going to say is to just prove that you're right, or is to just prove, that you're nurturing your ego for, don't say it. But if it's coming from a place to genuinely support and help, then put that intention out there. Say, I want to share this with you. The intent is coming from making you the best you can be, whatever that might be you want to say, but invite it. And if the person says, I don't want to hear it, keep your mouth shut, just don't go there. But if they say, yeah, please, then share it with them. But always come from a place of kindness and a belief that you're doing it for the best intention of that other person, not for you to feel better, for that other person to feel better.
Yeah. And another one to prove that cheesy, the world should be more cheesy, because it would definitely be a better place.
I've said it a lot of cheesy. It sounds a bit like repeat.
Yeah, but if you think about it, everything that we judge as cheesy, it's actually positive, and it's actually the way things should be. And again, who came up with this notion of cheesy and lame? And nothing is lame. Just be yourself. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, for sure. I think, was it Oscar Wilde that said, "Be yourself," because you can't be anyone else, or something.
Yeah, I think so.
That was a quote from. Yeah, it's so true, and it's but it takes work. It's like a muscle.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, particularly when I work with organizations, or if I'm working with individuals, like all of us, we want the tablet or the quick fix or the magic wand moment. And for anything that's worth doing and needs change, it's going to take effort. It's a bit like going to the gym when you're like, right, I've got to get a bit fitter, or if you're going out for a jog and you haven't done that for a long time, and it's going to hurt. But over time, that you will get there. But it takes a first step, and to be intentional about it and just say, do you know what? I want to be the change I want to see in the world. So how do I make that happen? Well, the first step might just be this, might just be putting my running shoes on and, walking around the block, whatever that might look like. But it's you certainly, you can get there, but it's not going to be an easy and a quick, fix. So let's stop tick boxing, which I think happens in organizations. We've got, well-being, or we've got a neurodiversity policy, or whatever that might be. Make it real and ask the people that it impacts. Ask them what they want. And be okay with that. Be okay with what comes, and be okay with saying, maybe we can do this now, but we can't do that bit. But that's okay. It's a first step. So it's showing that intention that you want to do the right thing. You want to head in that direction. So
be patient, and with hard work, you can do anything, as you said earlier.
Neurodiverse Voices podcast, celebrating difference.
Great. Thank you so much, Cheryl. It was an amazing conversation we had. I'm very grateful to you for being here, and maybe in a few months we can catch up again and see how things are.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for having me, letting me come on and, yabber away. But I hope some of that's been useful.
Yeah, I'm sure it was, and it will be for our listeners. Thank you for listening to the Neurodiverse Voices podcast. Our next episode will be available in the next couple of weeks. And I really hope to have you on that side when it comes to that.